You are listening to the Mary Jane Society podcast, where you will meet entrepreneurs, cultivators,
to repeal.
Great to meet you, John, Greg. I just thought, is there anything that you would like to say as far as Ice Miller and what you're doing in the cannabis industry, just before we get started in the questions that you want people to know?
Completely. We've had our cannabis practice at the firm for over 10 years. We practice throughout the country. We're really in all facets of cannabis, whether it's government affairs, whether it's regulatory, whether it's litigation, corporate. We do all things in cannabis, and we have a robust group of over 30 professionals. And as it relates to Ohio, we were the author of the ballot issue that brought adult use sales to Ohio. So we built a really robust practice, and we really enjoy working with our clients. But yeah.
That's great. I didn't realize that you had been involved, or the company has been involved 10 years. That's quite a long time.
Yeah, it's like dog years, right? They multiply.
Yeah, it's great. And so is the firm based in Ohio, or is this part of your practice?
So our firm is based out of Indianapolis, in Indiana, but we have offices in Indiana, Illinois, obviously Chicago, DC, New York, Florida, and other states as well. So we've got
Our cannabis practice is essentially centered here in Columbus, Ohio, where John and I both work.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. So I thought it would be good to just kind of start out with some quick, facts about the Ohio market, just to kind of get everybody who's not completely following it. So I thought I'll just start out some things I'm thinking is the first recreational dispensary opening was August of 2024. And now they're, a year and a half later, I think they have about $1 billion in revenue, predicted to make to go to 1.5 this year if the dispensary numbers go up. I read that there are just short of 200 dispensaries. And then some other questions I had is Ohio a limited license state? Okay, so that makes it very appealing as well.
We have, we can get into numbers and so forth, but yeah, very highly regulated state, which is, results in limited licenses. We've, like you said, we've got approximately 200 or so that are up and running right now, with others in various stages of development. But even when that's all built out, we'll probably settle in somewhere a little over 300. And as we'll talk about, Senate Bill 56, which just passed, put a cap on that number, which we can get into some details about that.
And Pam, if I could add on that, Ohio's always been a control state. As you know, with your background, each state has a different philosophy. Michigan has, double the number of licenses or more. Some states, but Ohio, whether it's liquor agency stores, cannabis, gaming, Ohio has always been a control state. And to your earlier point, that's really what does make it an attractive marketplace from a business perspective.
So I wanted to start out with, I just heard some news headlines that the Ohio AG is suing some MSOs, and just kind of wanted to know what's happening there. Do you know about what's happening there and why they're doing that? And
yeah, well, we can't get into details because it's a litigation matter, right? And we don't. It's pretty fresh, but I think your reports are correct. Dave Yost is the Attorney General of Ohio. He is finishing his 8 years Attorney General. And he has brought a complaint against 9 of the MSOs, multi-state operators, on pricing and other issues. So still very early in the ballgame, right? But it is big news in Ohio.
Mm-hmm. You mean he thinks that, or he's accusing them of pricing, product pricing in the dispensaries, or like a monopoly? Or
I think there's looking at the antitrust laws in terms of what you can do on pricing and what you can't do, and again, it's only a complaint, so it's there's still various sides of the story to be told.
And then how did the Ohio market transition from medical to adult use? Meaning, like I'm based in New York, and here we were. The crafter, the mom and pop, the small business owners were supposed to have like a year head start on the MSOs, just to give them, level playing field, which didn't end up happening because of all these litigations that were happening in our state. But was it a smooth transition? Are there complaints from small business owners about the medical market? How are they working together? Or it's kind of like here in New York, they're almost pitted against each other.
So it's helpful to know that, kind of go backwards a little bit first. Okay, so when our medical program was launched, it was passed. The medical law was passed by the legislature to establish a medical marijuana program in about 2017 or so, I think, is when it became active or effective. So up until we had, as John mentioned, issue 2, which legalized adult use, and it's key to remember this was a citizen-led initiated ballot measure. In other words, the citizens wrote issue 2, essentially, the proponents of the bill. As John mentioned, our firm was representing the sponsors of that bill and authored it, essentially wrote it. So we're very familiar with, what it did and what it said. But immediately after passage, our legislature started talking about wanting to revise it. And just, as you can imagine, they weren't very enamored with it for the simple reason that they didn't write it. And it had some provisions in it that they caused them significant gastric distress, let's just say. And so they started immediately caucusing to try to build up a consensus on how they would want to change it. The first attempt kind of stalled out at the end of 2025. But as soon as the new session started in early 24, in early 25, when the new session started, they picked up immediately with what we now know as Senate Bill 56. And at that same time, they also proposed a bill called Senate Bill 86 that would legalize intoxicating beverages, hemp-derived THC beverages. And ultimately, as this thing ended up heading to the House, those two things were sort of married into one bill, Senate Bill 56, sort of an omnibus bill that would address both planned reforms, as they called them, of issue 2, but also this hemp issue that has been starting to gain steam, not just in Ohio, but all over the country, as you know.
Right.
So what Senate Bill 56 ended up doing, and we can talk a little bit more about it, but essentially repealed the entirety of Ohio Revised Code 3780, which was enacted by issue 2. So going into that, we basically had a set of laws, our existing medical laws in one part of the revised code. Then we had this other new set of laws for our adult use program that was just recently enacted in November of 23. With Senate Bill 56 now repealing the entirety of 3780, what we're going to see this year is both sides of the program now coalescing into one set of laws under Ohio Revised Code 3796, which used to be our medical law. That will now be our cannabis law in general. And then what we'll also see during the year is kind of having to marry the sets of rules that were being developed for each program under those sets of laws. So it's a little bit of we're sort of in a transition period, I guess you could call it, for the first half of the year. Yeah.
Not knowing what's going to happen, really.
And Pam, Greg, I'm not sure if you're done.
Go right ahead.
Going back, Greg did an excellent job talking about the history, and I think it's really important to know that back in 2016, when I think it was House Bill 528, whatever, when that bill passed, the legislature did not want to enact it. Right? It was only because I think they had to, right? Because there was a constitutional amendment on the ballot the year before. There, cannabis and marijuana was being enacted in neighboring states. Things were moving forward, so it was almost a deep offensive move by the legislature to put their own brand on it. And when we got issue 2 passed and became effective December 7th of 2023, we were in a scenario where the legislature and the leadership of the state did not support it. And I think it's interesting, Senate Bill 56, if it was enacted within 3 to 6 months after issue 2 became effective, it would have been a completely different bill, right? And I think it took time for the legislature and leadership to realize that these are heavily regulated businesses. They follow the laws. They do things. There's not crime. There's money that can be created. So I think the evolution of it over the last 2 years allowed it to become the Senate Bill 56 that passed in December.
It's interesting to know and to point out that it was voter approved, and I guess the laws were made around what they want to do. I just learned that that's what happened with Prop 64 in California, which also is causing some issues because it's embedded in Prop 64. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. But do you see some of the laws, I guess, that were written in during the voter approved that should be changed, in your opinion, that's kind of causing problems now, like in after,
in Ohio, there's a couple of ways for laws to be enacted, right? The legislature, the General Assembly can pass a law, and they chose not to, right? They did not want to do adult use cannabis at that time. And so under the Ohio Constitution, under Article 2, you can have the initiative power where the voters can either decide collect signatures to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot or an initiated statute. And our clients and our efforts were to draft and to pass an initiated statute. So basically what we did with issue 2, it was the revised code. And, it went into the law, and the revised code can be amended, right? It can be amended by the legislature at any time. It's not in the Constitution. So I think we anticipated changes, right? I think legislature, we've got great leadership in Ohio with the speaker and Senate president and the governor. I think they were very thoughtful and worked with us and others on this. But it's, we did anticipate some changes.
So, so breaking this down a little bit so people understand, what is it that they want to repeal?
Senate Bill 56, which we can discuss, is the revisions to issue 2. And that is what is not effective yet. It's not effective till around March 19th of this year. But that is what is trying to be repealed by a petitioner's committee.
Okay, so it's a little confusing with all those laws.
I will say this, and maybe this could add some clarity to it. During the time that Senate Bill 56 was pending, and I mentioned that Senate Bill 86 was passed by the Senate within a month or so of that, when they became married, and Senate Bill 86 was a pretty significant piece of legislation because it was the first time that we ever started hearing about these, or that the legislature ever had any significant discussion about the hemp-derived THC beverages. And the sole purpose of Senate Bill 86 was to, kind of limit all the other, put guardrails around all the other intoxicating hemp products, gummies and vapes, and the flour that was being sold at gas stations and so forth, still is. But it really caused some people's eyes to open when it proposed that, hey, the beverage part's okay, and we're going to set up a pathway to do that using our 3-tier alcohol system, okay? And it gained some momentum pretty quickly. What ultimately happened when these two bills were combined in the House is that it seemed like the impetus behind reforming the issue 2 language started to lose some steam, and the hemp stuff really was driving the bus here. And that became sort of, I think, the challenge of the legislature was to try to set up this pathway for these beverages, but at the same time clamping down on all this other stuff, and at the same time trying to rein in. So it became, by turning it into this omnibus type bill, it became harder and harder to focus on specific individual things. As a result of that, we felt, I think John will agree, but he can certainly chime in here, that we were pretty happy with how issue 2, even though the language in itself was repealed, it was going to get married into the medical law. Like the end net effect of the changes wasn't that significant, at least if you were looking at what they had on the table in the very beginning. And we can get into some of those important parts of issue 2 that were preserved. But at the end of the day, I think what caused the most headlines were the fact that it was going to take a really hard line on this intoxicating hemp industry, especially in light of what the federal government just did to change the definition of hemp. And so even to this day, I think the focus really is on what that did in terms of this intoxicating hemp market.
And Pam, would you want us to, I know you talked about the repeal. Do you want us to kind of give a little bit of a background on that process and kind of where that is? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, that would be great. Yes. So 56 they're talking, that is the repeal, 56.
Yep, that's right. They're trying to repeal 56 and only portions of 56. They're not trying to repeal the entire enactment of the act of Senate Bill 56. And we talked earlier about the initiative authority under Article 2 of the Constitution. In the Ohio Constitution, the voters also have the right of referendum, right? Which means there's a process. If they don't like what the legislature passed, they can put it before the voters, right? And it's about a 3-step process. It had to go to the Attorney General. It was rejected the first time by the Attorney General. It's not being fair and truthful in terms of their summary. It was just approved by the AG, allowed to move forward. So there's a group called the Ohioans for Cannabis Choice, and I think it's really made up, and I don't have firsthand knowledge, but it's probably by folks who don't like what's in Senate Bill 56, and it may not be good for their business ultimately. So they may be funding an effort, and they have to collect 6% signatures from the last gubernatorial election. That's about 248,000 signatures that they have to collect, valid signatures, by the end of March. So dead of winter, it's a big task, and I think everyone's just monitoring to see where that is. But if they are successful, basically the provisions that are subject to the referendum would then be stayed, and they would not go into effect. And then you would go in November of 2026, the voters would decide what they want to do. Do they want Senate Bill 56 to become effective as is, or do they want those specific provisions repealed? And I think Greg can speak to it better than anyone, but I think the key provisions are the hemp provisions that they want repealed.
The ballot, yeah, that's correct. The ballot referendum really only seeks to repeal three parts, the first three sections of Senate Bill 56, which is where you find the language addressing intoxicating hemp, and particularly the hemp beverages. And one of the things that we're hearing that is driving this referendum is that the governor, when Senate Bill 56 was passed by conference committee and sent to the governor's desk for signature, it had a provision in it that would have allowed these hemp-derived THC beverages to basically have a carve-out that would last as long as the federal carve-out or the federal runway, which goes until I think mid-November of 26. And the governor line item vetoed that particular provision out of the bill, which in effect put the same deadline on the intoxicating hemp parts of the business as all the other parts of the intoxicating hemp business, as John said, effective March 19th of this year. So on that date, all intoxicating hemp products, including the beverages, are now turned out, if you will, unless they're able to get enough ballot signatures by that date and send it to the ballot and then cause a stay of the language, as John mentioned.
I mean, it makes sense to me to get rid of all those bad actor products and gas stations and things like that, and to keep the beverages going, because they seem to be, there's more transparency there and more accountability, I think, in, safety and things like that. But, and I feel like you can't put that back in the bottle, beverages. So, it's just going to cause some other problems. So if they're successful, then it's going to get voted on in November. Which one? Get rid of the gas station stuff, keep the beverages, which I'm sure everybody's going to say. So is that like the biggest thing that's going on in Ohio right now? It seems kind of.
No, there definitely were some things that it did. I think we could give you some quick bullet points on what it did for the cannabis industry. I think we've covered the hemp side pretty well. We talked about the number of dispensaries in Ohio. Up until now, there really wasn't a cap on how many dispensaries there could be ultimately. And Senate Bill 56 did place a statewide cap of 400 dispensaries. By the time we get done with the licensing we have right now, as we mentioned, we could have somewhere a little north of 300. So there still is some dispensaries that will need to be licensed. We don't expect the division to start doing that until this current round of licensing is a little bit further down the tracks. It didn't change any caps to cultivation or processing, just this one cap on dispensaries, which, as John mentioned earlier, was pretty much in line with being a control state and heavily regulated. There were some other, that's now codified in the language. So that's a big deal. There really wasn't a cap codified until now.
Are towns allowed to opt out, or is that, so you do have some, how is that?
It's a great question. So states in Ohio, even during the medical program, no city or local jurisdiction was ever forced to have one of these in their jurisdiction. That's always been the case, and it still is. If a city wants to pass a ban or a moratorium, they can do that. The rub is that, and this is important because this was actually one of the things that I think the industry was really looking hard at in Senate Bill 56 and fought hard to preserve, and that is what's called the host community fund. So as part of issue 2, the language that was passed by the voters allowed for a 10% excise tax on all adult use sales. That's common. You've seen that in other states. What this particular bill, though, did was it carved up that money and actually tried to tell the state what they could do with that money, and actually, divided it up. And 36% of the tax pool from that 10% excise tax, or what amounts to 3.6 cents per dollar of every adult use sale, would go back to the host community that had that dispensary in its jurisdiction. So if a city wants to avail themselves of that, obviously they got to make the move to say, yes, we want one, and then get rid of their moratorium or ban if they had one. And what we saw since the enactment of issue 2 was it took a long time for the state to get the rules written and for the program to be stood up. And during that time, the cities and municipalities were very skeptical about whether they were ever going to see that money. And as a matter of fact, the state refused to allocate that money because they claimed there was a defect in the issue 2 language and it didn't have any appropriations provisions in it. That was up for debate. But the important thing is that throughout this process, the industry fought hard, as I mentioned. And when Senate Bill 56 was passed, it preserved that 36% preserved the excise tax at 10%, and it also preserved the 36% going to the host communities. So what we're already seeing in Ohio, since this was signed by the governor, is we're starting to see communities take a new look and revisit the idea now that the money is being allocated. It's not only allocated. John mentioned earlier when we were talking, I think, John, what did you say, $35 million has already been distributed?
Yep.
So the money's flowing, and that's what they were taking a wait and see attitude. And so now they're seeing the money flow, and that's going to have a very positive impact over time on the amount of communities that will allow this in their communities.
And Greg, if I'll be happy to add on that. Greg and I really probably, and Sam Porter from our firm really has done a lot of speaking at township associations, municipal leagues. It was kind of our duty that we wanted to really educate locals. I'm a local official for over 20 years. I'm a township trustee. And Ohio has a long history of home rule and respecting local control. And so when we passed issue 2, when we drafted issue 2, we wanted to make sure that the locals that they could ban, they could limit the number, they could make prohibitions. The exception is if you already had a facility, a dispensary, you can't really say they can't be there anymore. They should be able to convert, and there was processes that were built into that. But the legislature maintained that. And one of the things that I think was important that was maintained is that local governments can't add, they kept the provision that you can't have an additional tax or fee. So you can't have double taxation at the state and local level of the dispensaries.
Thank God.
Yeah.
I just read that, I think it was Cal Polytech or something did some sort of report about it, saying that doing these deserts, these retail deserts where towns can opt out, is really fueling the illicit market, because obviously there's no stores for people to go get, within that town. And then it also hurts, supposedly that was a report that they did a study on that. But so many states are doing that, but it kind of does make sense. I understand, like, for a local community, I understand both sides, but I feel like as far as the economics and equilibrium of the whole industry within a state, because we're state siloed, is kind of disruptive to the whole supply chain. And also, is there enough, is there enough business for these dispensaries to, to operate and stay afloat in these kind of situations? So, I mean, it's interesting, because I think New Jersey's having that problem right now, and California has notoriously been complaining about that. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, one of my first projects was in California, right, in Santa Rosa, right, trying to get a dispensary and working there. And yeah, I think you hit it right. It is hard. But what I think we're finding in Ohio, and I think Greg hit it, is that the more that the tax revenue is flowing, and people see that these are really just retail, these are control states, you're going to see less deserts, more acceptance. And I think the superintendent, Jim Canepa, and his team have done an excellent job, right, thinking through this issue. Dispensaries can't be within 1 mile of each other, right? There's districts that they're trying to create, and I think they're always trying to evolve to make sure that people can succeed and move around, but while at the same time respecting the local control.
Okay.
We saw this play out in Michigan when they first went adult use. I believe the initial number was 80% of their localities opted out, until they started realizing how much money they were leaving on the table. And it didn't happen overnight, but that number's decreased significantly. So it does take some time, but yeah, and look, at the end of the day, it's about access and setting up a viable program. And as you mentioned, if you have these deserts in the state where people can't get access, it just prevents the entire platform from operating efficiently.
Yeah.
And it really does impact pricing too. The ultimate goal is to make accessibility isn't just having a dispensary within a mile of your residence. It's about, having choices and consumer choices. Yeah.
Right. And then how about the taxes? Or it doesn't sound like they're onerous compared to what's happening in California again, and then what just happened in Michigan. I don't understand. You don't need an MBA to say that's just going to be, that could be the straw to break the camel's back. That they can't. If you look at those numbers, how do they survive? People are pulling. You see businesses pulling out of Michigan because of what just happened. And then some claim the reason that these other towns that have opted out in California are not opting in because even though they see this great tax revenue, but it's because the taxes are so onerous, and they just say they're not going to be able to survive, and it's just going to be this, So how is all that in Ohio?
when we drafted the tax rate, like in issue 2, we put it at 10%, right? And we looked at Michigan, we looked at neighboring states, because people will drive to neighboring states, right? Taxes do matter on consumer behavior. So the legislature considered increased taxes. They looked at it, they're always looking for additional sources of revenue, but I think they got it, right? I think they listened to the industry to say, if you increase the tax any higher or you do more, it's going to mean more people are going to drive north to Michigan, or they're going to go to the illicit market. And so there's only so much tax. So I think we're grateful that the consideration the legislature made on that in making that decision.
I think to piggyback on what John just said, I believe when Senate Bill 56 was first proposed, it contained an increase of the excise tax to 25%. So this is another example of the industry, it over the year or so, that the legislature debated this. As John mentioned, we were able to educate them on what the repercussions of that would be. And in the end, they decided to keep it at 10, which I think was a big win for the industry and the program and the customers and the patients. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So, okay. So sorry, we kind of went off the track there. I don't know, Greg, you were going down the list of some other things that we might have.
Yeah, I mean, I think we covered most of it. There were some definite consumer-oriented parts of Senate Bill 56. The legislature, I think one of their primary concerns was, as they mentioned, people walking down the street smoking a joint, or the fact that people could be in a public place and still smell marijuana. So there was a lot of focus on those types of things that you didn't necessarily see in issue 2. So they definitely, without going into the laundry list, they definitely tightened up some of those things. There was a lot of focus on intoxicated driving, as there should be, and so forth. So there were things that they wanted to clean up there. And that involves the transportation of marijuana products in your car. There were some things added there. Home grow was largely left alone. That was a big topic when Senate Bill 56 first came out. But again, I think over time, the legislature decided that wasn't something that was a top priority for now. Maybe it was in the beginning.
And potency limits, right? Was there something about potency? Like it was from 10 to 5 or something like that?
Yeah. So in the current medical laws, potency was restricted to 70% in concentrates. We're talking about vapes here and stuff mostly. Issue 2 would have raised that to 90. And they pulled that part of the language out, kept it at 70, but they did allow the Division of Cannabis Control authority to raise that, and basically in a rule package that's recently been passed, they have started the process of raising that to 90 already. So even though the statutory language didn't change, it did have a big change in it, which allowed the DCC to make this call based on research and what other markets are doing.
Okay, well, that's good to know they're looking at other markets.
One of the programs that was repealed was social equity program. Generally, right? That, as you know, Pam, and from other states, that has been a big issue in Maryland and Illinois, and when we New York for sure. And when we looked at New York, we looked at Illinois when drafting issue 2, right? We looked at the social equity program and saw some merit behind it. But those licenses have been removed, right? The funding, there was a dedicated funding of 36% of the tax going to support the social equity program. All that is gone. I think there's still some preference language that has survived in current law that's been held to be unconstitutional. But that was a major change in policy from issue 2.
And so have there been are there any social equity license holders out there that are going it alone? Is that?
Well, there are license holders who won because of social equity, right? And some are still in existence, right? That they got a preference. I think back when the licenses were initially offered. Some have sold, some are still, are in different facets of the industry. But there are still social equity applicants who are in business.
They're just not getting funding, I guess.
They're not getting. Yeah,
I mean, that happened in New York too. It just totally fell apart. That whole. Another alternative for that is selling their licenses to make money is a common thing, which I feel like that's a good thing, at least if they have that, that they can make use of that. So what was the the percentage that social equity had to be part of to get a social equity license? Just out of curiosity, was it like 51-49?
I think you needed a majority ownership, and you had to have held the license at least for a period of time, right? The regulator, whether it was the pharmacy board or the Department of Commerce, there was litigation, there was controversy on people selling their licenses, and the state generally took the position, if you were a cultivator, that you had to you had to stay in business for 2 years after the first plant was tagged and metric, right? So there were some restrictions that you couldn't just get the license and sell right away. And the same thing with current provincial general licenses. They don't want people selling or transferring ownership until after you're operational, right? So that's an important rule by the division.
Oh, okay. So licensing and regulatory update, Ohio's fully built out with dispensaries. I guess we kind of really talked about that too, right? As far as dispensaries and what's expected in 2026. And
We did, but I think we could share a little bit more on the other type of licenses if you you think. So in Ohio, you've got, as you know from all the state programs, you've got cultivators, processors, testing labs, and the dispensaries. And from a cultivation perspective, there's two levels of cultivator. One is a level 1, and 2 is a level 2, and they're basically the same. It's just the square footage that you're allowed to have. And I believe I think it was maintained under Senate Bill 56. If you're level 1, you can cultivate up to 100,000 square feet. And that can be double stacked, right? You don't have to be, single stacked. And for level 2, it's 15,000 square feet. And so there of level 1s, there's 23 level 1s, and there's 14 level 2s. So that's kind of the size of the cultivation market. But Greg, I don't know if you want to share kind of where we are in processing.
Yeah, sure. And again, a lot of these numbers, the cultivation and processing numbers really have not changed under adult use. The only licenses that were provided for in the statute were additional dispensary licenses, and we're in the process of those being developed right now. So these, the numbers John just mentioned to you have pretty much been that way for years. Same with the processors. Most of those cultivators, where I think that John mentioned 23 level 1s and there's 14 level 2s, all of those licenses are vertically integrated, meaning they also have processor licenses. And then we have approximately 9 or 10, maybe 11 or so, independent processors that are not tied to cultivation. And there is some discussion, going on. I think there's a pending bill right now in the House to take care of that and put them on some type of even footing, at least with the rest of the industry, and by providing them perhaps a supply side type grow license or something like a level 2. So that's something that we'll look for and see if that gains any traction this year. It's been something it was discussed throughout Senate Bill 56, but it just didn't take off yet. So we'll see what happens there. And we talked about the dispensaries, and John mentioned, the fact that dispensaries can't be within a mile from each other. We also have, like a lot of states, what we call prohibited facilities buffer, which means that you can't be within 500 feet of a church, of a daycare, of a public school, a library, a public park. And those two buffers, the 1 mile and the 500-foot buffer, when you also combine that with, John mentioned, the allocation of licenses within certain regions and districts, it's becoming difficult for the people that don't have site licenses to find something they like. It's akin to a game of musical chairs, and there are just not a lot of chairs left. So the division is aware of that and has been discussing, how to address that. Something to look for in 26 is for them to try to shepherd those still yet to be open dispensaries to the finish line, so that they can then kind of reassess. And then, no idea when, but at some point within the next year or two, there will probably be another application period for dispensaries.
Oh, okay. So there's no applications are closed right now for dispensaries until these.
Yeah, there's no open application periods right at the moment. That's correct.
And dispensaries are not vertically integrated there.
Well, some are, but
Just medical.
Yeah, we do not grant vertical licenses like some states. So if you want to assemble a vertical here, you have to apply or acquire the other licenses that you don't have.
I mean, in New York, medical dispensaries can be vertically integrated, cultivation through a dispensary, but adult use, they cannot be. But like you were saying earlier, cultivation and manufacturing can be one license, but you can't, not in the adult use. So is that how it is there?
Well, even here, the processing and cultivation are separate licenses. If you have two, you applied for two and got both, or you bought one or the other. So we do not award licenses here that way. Like, you cannot just get a vertical. You would have to, build it essentially.
And with one exception, in issue 2, we drafted a language. So if you were a level 1 cultivator, you were automatically given 3 dispensaries as part of being an owner. And if you're a level 2, you were given 1, just to help the market and get things going. But other than that, you have to really acquire the licenses, and you have to be found suitable. put your ownership group forward. One interesting thing, I think really two interesting things with facilities is what you're going to see in 2026 and beyond is relocations. You're going to see dispensaries say, we've dealt with this on several projects where people say, this site is just not good for me, right? I think it was good when I picked it, but there's a better place. Now that the map is set, people are going to move around and try to capture more business. Same thing for cultivation, right? You're allowed under current law and under Senate Bill 56. I think the interpretation is you can have your cultivation space, your square footage in more than one location. So if you wanted to have two buildings, you could have two buildings.
Mm.
One other thing to add there to what John just said, we talked earlier about the host community fund money. A lot of people that had to look for dispensary locations over the past year were choosing from a limited selection, meaning there were lots of municipalities that were saying no. But as that number starts to decrease, you're going to start seeing some very attractive communities come online, which I think will be another incentive for some of these people to relocate.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. If you move to your part of town where you're either on the border of that non-participating town or they come online, right? I could see how that can all kind of work out. What about your metric system? Is that operational now? Is it up and are there any problems with that?
Not really problems, I would say. We've had metric ever since we launched our medical program. So when we did transition to adult use, there wasn't any learning curve there really for the industry, which was nice. I think the operators, if you were to ask them, they find metric a little cumbersome. From a technology standpoint, I hear a lot of complaints about how there hasn't been a lot of technological advancements in it, but it works. The division relies on it heavily, in terms of their compliance and enforcement.
Right.
So yeah, it's a big part of our
it's a
program.
good thing. It's definitely a good thing. It's just that they seem to be having some issues in other states. Again, back in New York where I am, they added on this extra tagging fee. So in other words, it's every item has to be tagged. It can't be the case pack. Yeah. And it's really a big lawsuit is happening here over that. And it's accelerating, I'll tell you. But
one thing that I think our program is proud of, and that goes not just the division, but I think our industry as a whole here is that we have seed to sale tracking. We take that very seriously, and it's part of the highly regulated dynamic that we have.
Yeah, no, I think, and honestly, any of the operators that I've spoken to are not against that because it'll help, with a lot of different things, recalls and all sorts of things, but inversion, which we're having a big problem with. But it's the extra fee that they threw on it is just making it really labor intensive, first of all. And then the extra cost, somebody quoted me, is so originally they had BioTrack, which would have cost supposedly this one operator, say $250,000, but now a year just to incorporate all this and the cost of everything. But now he said, now that he has metric, it's going to be $1 million. I mean, that's a big difference in saying to someone, you got to spend $250,000 to be compliant. Oh, no, we're going to switch it. So, it's just, and California is having some other metric issues. And I can't remember exactly what that is, but I was just wondering, they're taking a lot of heat right now. But
it's a great point. I mean, that's the difference of somebody staying in business or paying for an expansion, or, do you pay your people a living wage, right? How many people do you hire? I mean, it really is material.
yes, I don't understand the thinking sometimes of these, government authorities who impose these kind of things. It's so frustrating. So I guess just winding down, what advice would you give to someone wanting to come into Ohio to open up a business there?
I'll let John touch that, but before he does that, I just want to say that what we're going to see, I think, mostly in 26 here in our industry from our division, as we start winding down this licensing process that we're going through right now, I think you will start to see our division pivot to a focus more on compliance and enforcement. And so what we're telling our clients going into the year is to start being a little more proactive about your compliance. Don't wait for the division to come and ask you or tell you they're going to do an audit. Start doing your own audits, making sure that you're comfortable with your compliance and ready for, if when the division comes and says they want to take a look, at your metric records or whatever it might be.
You mean because it's about time, because the industry, the Ohio market is maturing and they're going to be starting to go in and look
Yeah,
at
I mean,
these
our
different
division is,
businesses?
as John mentioned, they're doing great work, but they're growing too, right? As our industry grows and as that sales number goes like this, they need to keep hiring more people and training more people. And so, this, as they've been focusing on this licensing and also the rules promulgation process that we're going through right now, which is now just it's about to take a detour because we got to marry old and new rules together now that they weren't counting on doing. So as soon as they get through the rulemaking process and the licensing and all that, I don't think they're just going to be sitting around on their hands with nothing to do. I believe there will be a pivot towards enforcement, compliance, and so forth. We're just trying to get our clients ready for that. But
Another thing I see people talking about too is maybe, and I know, is more OSHA uh, oversight. I feel like I'm hearing in the news a lot more awareness about workplace safety, meaning environmental toxins. Some people have died. This one woman who had the asthma, another one came up. So, in the cultivation facilities, they're still trying to figure out filtration, like air filtration and all this kind of stuff. So I almost feel like OSHA is going to start coming in because you haven't really heard of them.
another thing is if you think about it, we don't really have any federal standards in this industry, right? We're still developing them, right? And you're starting to hear talk on the hemp side about GMP and different things. Eventually we're going to get to that here too, right? And that's just going to be another layer of compliance that people have to worry about. And
Yes.
and so it's an evolution, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah. GMP for sure is coming down the pike, and that's a big overhaul, expensive overhaul. But especially if we go to rescheduling and the government is focused more on medical first, it's going to have to be GMP, and yeah. So there's a few things in that area I think is, like you were saying, is probably going to start coming to
Well,
light.
in your question kind of was exactly in my head, right? Because one of the things I wanted to share is Ohio is an attractive market right now. It's you asked people coming in Ohio what advice. I mean, we're seeing every day people trying to get into Ohio, right? It's a successful state. I think the numbers are good. The regulator is good. I think it's a control state, so it's not going to probably grow to a high number. But I think understanding the market, understanding your local government, right? Knowing where you are, being a good corporate citizen, being involved in the community, building relationships within the industry, right? There's a state association called OCAN, run by David Bowling as executive director, does a really nice job with his team and their leadership. But working with everyone, building relationships, and I think just making sure that you and Greg talked a lot about this as being forward thinking on knowing your regulator, knowing what their cardinal sins are, right? What are the things that they really, really care about, and just being on top of it because it's a license, right? It's a privilege to do business, and people are going to make mistakes, right? I started off as a gaming lawyer. That's how I got into cannabis, heavy regulated. There's always going to be mistakes, but own your mistakes, fix your mistakes, work proactively with your regulator. And I think we are now going to be shifting into we do a lot of work in other states, but we're looking at Indiana, we're looking at other South Carolina, other states that may be coming online, right? Is it the next round of work for our clients?
Right. Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, right? And we do a lot of work in PA. We work with, Greg's working on a New York issue right now. But the regulator's great in PA, and they're that probably going to go adult use, sooner than later, right? So there will be a lot of opportunity there.
That's great. Well, it's so nice to hear that it doesn't seem like there's a lot of frustration coming out of Ohio from the operators against the regulators, the Division of Cannabis Control, like, some other states, it just feels they're not working together. But, you obviously worked closely with the government, and it just, in addition to what you're saying, it seems like a very positive atmosphere. So,
Well, there's always issues, right? There's always human beings, and I think I found that the regulators generally works to try to find a solution, right? If you're honest and you share. But Ohio used to have a more than one agency that was a regulator. You had two different agencies, and I think that was a real big concern to the industry, right? That they were like duplicative regulations and different styles of enforcement. So I think it's better to have one agency than two.
yeah, for sure. Thank you both so much. It was really a pleasure to meet you, and I really enjoyed hearing about the Ohio market.
What's good, y'all? So thanks for tuning in. Again, I just found that OCAN actually posted that to their Facebook page. So I figured we should share it with the people. So they said they were basically one of the firms that created Issue 2. And so obviously you guys heard them. Those are two lawyers. So yeah. Let's see. The Numinati. These people came out of nowhere and say this is the industry. This is the product. Who are you? LOL. Well, yeah, and this is why people have to get involved, though. You know what I mean? Like, you can only be on the legacy for so long. You know what I mean? The legacy folks have to come above ground. And so this is why you have to get involved with these industry folks, because again, these are lawyers. So they were able to practice a form of law and then transition into another form of law, right? Like, they get hired by these millionaires or these groups that pool money together in this all cash business. And money talks in the United States. Money talks in capitalism, right? And so they take their millions of dollars, go find a law firm who will write up and draft their, contracts and their proposals and their RFPs, and then they go and lobby at the state house on the behalf of the people with the money. So again, this is why the average people lose out consistently, because average people don't own businesses. Average people don't have access to cash, right? Large sums of cash. But average people are also constantly fighting amongst each other over bullshit, right? And so the elites, the billionaires, the multimillionaires, they don't even be rocking with each other all the time, but they'll rock with each other to benefit themselves over the people. So again, until people rise up and really start to hold these people who claim to be the industry accountable, which is Ohio Cannabis Coalition, OCAN, aka OCAN, and hold these, cannabis companies accountable, nothing will change. You know what I mean? So that's just is what it is. Hold on, I gotta take this. A lot going on in my household. I apologize. My daughter just lost her tooth. Then my nephew had to call and apologize because he was misbehaving today. So, I try to bring you out the news in spite of, and updates in spite of all the stuff I got going on in my life. So if I could do it with kids, nephew, y'all could do a little bit too. You know what I mean? Like, I know people be like, oh my God, like, don't nobody pay me to do this bullshit. Nobody pay me to look up this research and then say, I'm gonna go on StreamYard and stream it to the YouTube. You know what I mean? This is free 99. Okay. So thanks to everybody who always tunes in and supports. Thanks to, I think we're up to like 325 subs. So thank you to everybody, all 325 of you all who have subscribed to the Ohio Cannabis Report. Shout out to all of our OGs over on Instagram, our first Instagram at Ohio Cannabis Report, which we still have, but I've been operating under the Ohio_Cannabis_report on Instagram. We have 8 subscribers on our Substack. So if you want to see more of our articles, I've been writing some more articles and opinion pieces over on Substack. If you want to support us financially, you can donate over there as well. We are on LinkedIn. So if you just type in Ohio Cannabis Report, pretty much on any platform, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Threads. We're not on X. I haven't done X in a while. What else? I said LinkedIn. Yeah. So Patreon. I want to start doing some more stuff on Patreon. I want to start doing some more content on like exclusive content. So we have some more interviews coming. Make sure you check out the interview with Senator Bill DeMora. Great interview discussing the difference between SB 56 and issue 2. Obviously the voter referendum and the petitions have been circulating. So if you want to find a place or a location to sign the petition, just go to noonsb56.com and you can find where there is a petition on there or a location near you. So, make sure you follow us. If you're having an event and you want us to, showcase the event, or you want us to come to the event and get some content, shoot us the invite. Our email is at the bottom, ohiocannabisreport@gmail.com. I'm always willing to come out to events if I have the time and the energy and the resources, depending on where that is. I am in the Central Ohio area, so I'm in Columbus. I'll go to any place pretty much around the Columbus area, any place around the Ohio region. I'll be in Cincinnati next Saturday. I'll be doing a podcast with the homies, Smoking Podcast, 2 young women who have been doing a great job in the podcast space. So I'll be on their podcast next week. Then we have our social equity forum, April 4th, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. So if you go on our website or Eventbrite, just look up the Central Ohio Cannabis Social Equity Forum. That is a free event. I just ask that you RSVP. We are accepting donations to support this event, to hopefully do more events like it and create a series. A portion of the proceeds will go to Green Environmental Outreach, which is a 501c3 nonprofit, veteran owned, which supports our work and we support their work. Also, we have vendors. We have some small local organizations that'll be supporting us. We also have a few more community sponsorship opportunities for $50 available, where you will get a shout out at the event. You'll get your logo on all of our social media, our Instagram. We have over a few thousand followers on all of our platforms, pretty much all Ohio for the most part. So you'll get a shout out there. You'll get 2 tickets to the event. You'll get space at our resource table. You also get an interview, 10 to 20 minute interview on our YouTube page and also our podcast. If you want to be a social equity sponsor, that's $250. We have 3 spots available for the social equity sponsors. Again, you get to speak at the event. You get your own booth, your own table. You also get 2 to 3 tickets to the event as well. And then you get a podcast interview and social media. So again, thanks to our community sponsors, thanks to our panelists. I got a great panelist lined up for you guys. We'll be talking about Appalachia to the state capital. So we'll have people from Appalachia, Athens, Ohio, talking about some of the issues in Athens and Appalachia. Also, I think like 77% of Athens folks voted for issue 2. So we have some advocates, we have some home growers, some small businesses and entrepreneurs that'll be coming up from Athens to speak on the panel. And then we have a few folks from around the Central Ohio area. Tasha Roundtree is from Dayton. And then we got a couple of folks from the Columbus area. So we'll be marrying the Appalachian urban state capital conversation around social equity, class, economics, grassroots movements and stuff like that. So it should be a fairly interesting conversation. So again, thanks to all of our partners, sponsors, and community support. Shout out to Ancient Roots. They are our first, I would say, corporate sponsor, but Ancient Roots is an Ohio brand. So shout out to them for being willing to support us. Shout out to Kenzie Cherry. She's the one that made that happen. So I really want to give her a shout out. I'll also be interviewing her soon as well. She is a cannabis industry person. So who else do I need to shout out? I think that's it. So again, thanks to everybody who's been supporting. Shout out to App Girls Cannabis. They've always supported the wave. If there are any other brands that want to rock with us, man, we're grassroots. You know what I mean? That's independent, indie. You know what I mean? So everything is, I'm out in my basement right now, man, in my little office, in my little cubicle, just, you know what I mean? Bringing y'all the latest and greatest Ohio cannabis content. Again, I just try to share what, the updates, community stuff. So if you have any tips that you want us to share, again, if you have any events, please contact us. Let us know. If you want to be on the podcast, again, send us your information, right? Send us email, let us know who you are, what you do. We are just accepting stories, right? Like, I want to share people's authentic stories, right? Like somebody said there, like, these are the industry people. Where the fuck did these people come from, right? Like, I've been consuming cannabis since I was like 17, right? I am now 36 years old, right? So for the past basically 20 years of my life, I've been consuming cannabis. The last about 15, I've been in Ohio. We've only had legal for 6 years, right? So where did all these people come from is a very good question, because I've been asking the same thing. And I know a lot of people who have been consuming, selling, growing, but they can't own a dispensary. They can't own a cultivator. They can't own a processor because they just don't have the funds, right? So they end up having to go be a worker, you know what I mean? Work their way up in this industry where, and then try to do stuff on the side. There's so many people I know in the industry, all right, working for one of these companies, and then they come home and try to do their own thing, right? They try to come home and do their own small batch grows and still try to, So again, I want people to have full access to the industry. If you want to be a small craft grower, I think you should be able to do that. I think you should be able to set up shop, whether that's sell your product to a dispensary or whether that's open up your own little small dispensary, what have you, right? But again, SB 56 is taken away, giving cannabis to your partners, right? Giving cannabis to your friends. So these are why we need to have these conversations in the public, right? This is why we're having the Social Equity Forum. So I think it's important that we continue to have this dialogue. I think it's important that people come above ground, right? I know it could be scary. I know a lot of people have jobs. Somebody hit me up the other day. I was like, man, I got a government job, so I got to do everything low key. That's on you. You grown. But at some point, we all got to take risks. You know what I mean? And we got to live and die on our own sword. So I don't do all of that. Oh, I got a job and I got to do this X, Y, and Z, but then be playing both sides of the fence. And I don't like that. A lot of people are playing both sides of the fence. You know what I mean? In the day and age of Trump, like, just call a spade a spade. You know what I mean? If you're going to rock with it, you're going to rock with it. If you're going to be quiet, you're going to be quiet. But don't be trying to hop back and forth, because there's a lot of confusion in that. You know what I mean? So I support the legacy market 120%. But again, SB 56 is going to hurt a lot of people. There's a lot of people that like throwing these events, these festivals. And again, there's no outside combustion, right? So what's going to happen to these festivals, right? You think Ohio just going to let shit slide? No, they're going to start raiding shit. They're going to start raiding these pot shops, these head shops, right? Because again, to them, they're gonna market it and advertise it. Oh, look, we just had this major drug bust of this hemp shop. You know what I mean? And so that's coming March 20th, right? It's March now. You know what I mean? The law goes into effect March 20th, SB 56. So no combustion outside. You traveling with cannabis, it needs to be in the trunk of your car. If you don't have a trunk, it has to be in the farthest part of the car behind the driver's seat. No consuming in the car, even if it's a passenger. No public consumption. They're lowering THC levels. They're capping dispensaries at 400. What else? They're allowing for more shit to be in your mold and stuff to be in the cannabis products from the dispensary. If you go up to Michigan and bring your cannabis back, that is now illegal. Again, it was federally illegal, we know. But again, you're transferring cannabis between 2 legal states, medically and adult use. And so obviously the police weren't really doing much about that. So again, there's going to be a lot of things that change March 20th. So we just trying to make sure you guys are aware, of what's going on. Obviously, the state's not doing it, right? Like, I don't see the state educating the citizens. I don't see the politicians educating us like that. I don't see these OCAN businesses educating us like that. I don't see these cannabis industry folks educating us like that. You know what I mean? So again, I'm trying to do the best I can to deliver the information. Make sure you guys follow Ohio Cannabis Live as well. Anthony does a great job. He's always on Fridays at 4:20, puts on a great show. He also has a lot of great content. He's also hosting an Ohio Cannabis Expo here in Columbus. I think it's the Hilliard area. April, is it April? It's after our event, but Anthony will also be on our forum as well. So there are some people doing some great work in the industry and trying to get stories out there, get voices out there while also covering the industry. So we appreciate you guys and your support. Let me go through some of these comments and then I gotta log off real quick. Yeah, they just arrest their opposition. It's called pay to play and it's illegal. Yeah, and that's why we got to call them out, right? Like, get a group of people together, 5, 10, 15, 20 people, start writing the attorney general, right? Start writing some of the people in the organizations that are in power. And don't just write the attorney general, right? Write his aides, right? You have to write the people who do the work. Like, a lot of these people are just figureheads too. Like, there's people behind the scenes, legislative aides, legislative analysis or whatever. So you got to find the people who actually do the work. We should be whistleblowing. We should be calling in all types of tips. Like, all right, don't send me the tip. Send the tip to the AG's office, right? Send the tip to the people who can actually do it. Send the tip to the fucking FBI. Like, y'all be going to the wrong. Y'all go to Instagram, TikTok, Reddit. Go to the proper people, man. Like, because it's all tight. If it's illegal, go to the people who can make sure it's illegal. You know what I mean? I can't do that. I can say shit online. That's about it. But a lot of people, I don't know why they don't do it. Because I done tipped off a couple shit. I be writing tips. I'm a snitch now. I'm trust straight up. A couple of the plugs, luckily I ain't snitch on them for being white boys. Because you get away with a lot of shit in the suburbs. Shit you get away with in the suburbs, you ain't getting away with in the hood or when you black. I tell you that. You black in the suburbs, they watching. You got too many people in and out. Oh, he must be his drug activity going on over there. Way too many people in and out of that house. If it's white though, it's niggas with whole grows. Whole garage is growed out. Going to college campuses and dumping pounds off. So we not normalizing pay to play. I mean, pay to play has always been the game. I mean, that's capitalism. You got the money, you can play. And somebody brought it up too. The AG suing the 9 companies. They basically said, "Oh, that's just a pay to play play right there. He making them pay up. Those 9 companies that's coming in Ohio, running the prices up. Basically, that's what that was." But again, somebody tipped off the AG's office. The AG's office started to look into it. Shoot, we need to look at OCAN, Ohio Cannabis Coalition, because they are a nonprofit. Where is that money going? If they're a nonprofit, I need to see some of that bread. But show, and we coming for it too. So I'm on OCAN's head, by the way. I'm gonna make y'all work for all y'all money because y'all not spreading the wealth. All of them on trial, so just keep hurting people and letting good people watch you do it. Trying to beat them with money is playing the game they made because they shit bunk. should be able to rent a little retail spot for like $1,500 a month for sure. We are criminals again. Indeed. Speak for yourself. I've had people within OCAN tell me Andy Rayburn not only wants to make hemp and head shops illegal, he wants to help fund the prosecution of it. I wouldn't be surprised by that. That's how these dudes run. Shout out to Rodney. Rodney also has a great podcast that he's been doing. He's been doing a lot of great work on the ground. I know he's one of the people that's helping with the petitions for SB 56. I believe Cleveland area, I want to say. So make sure y'all follow Rodney Hash on YouTube as well. He got some great content. We also did an interview with him a while back. Like he said, it's a multiple people. I've had at least 2 people say it to me unprovoked. What's the true price of cannabis? Yeah, I think that depends on who's growing it too, right? And I mean, that's why I love, organic cannabis, right? Like for me, it's like this, the plant should be loved, man. We should be spreading the weed around. You know what I mean? We should be spreading the weed around. We should not be restricting weed, right? Like, but that's just me, right? Like we should have coffee shops. We should have all type. We don't even got no lounges, bruh. Like I'm trying to have the coffee shops like they got in what's that country that got the coffee shops? Amsterdam. But just imagine being able to go to the coffee shop, kick it, you know what I mean? A little co-working space. You know what I mean? You got the weed just sitting there. You can go pick. Ooh. Like the dispensary, the flow of the dispensary just whack as fuck too. Like it's not even fun. Like, thanks, Anthony, for the live. I ain't Anthony. My name is Gerald. Anthony runs Ohio Cannabis Live. We only got THCA. But all right, man, I appreciate you all tuning in. Again, it was a random live. I saw that podcast and I immediately had to share it with you guys. So again, thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate all the subs. I appreciate all the comments. I appreciate everybody that shows love and tunes in, man. It really helps me to keep going. Like I said, I do this just out of the passion and purpose of being a part of the community and trying to help further the Ohio cannabis community. So again, thank you guys for all your support. I hope you guys have had a good Monday. I hope you guys got some good weed. You know what I mean? That you could smoke on. All good, all good. But yeah, man, keep spreading the love, keep educating your people, keep educating the community. Keep talking about it, man. Keep talking about how cannabis has helped you in your life. I know a lot of people struggle with, being vulnerable sometimes publicly, but, I think it's important. Like, that's what really changes hearts. You know what I mean? When people that we know or people that we're close to or people that we're connected to, share their stories, right? It gives us a different perspective. It allows us to look through a different lens, right? People listen to me because I'm an athlete, right? Oh my God, like he's a big time man. Like that shit. Okay, like I'm a human being first. You know what I mean? Yes, I've been able to do a lot of great things athletically. Yes, I've had a good career and a lot of stuff. But at the end of the day, you know what I mean? Like when we put people on pedestals, it don't matter if you're an athlete, it don't matter if you're a politician, a billionaire, a millionaire, you give away some of your humanity. You know what I mean? Because a lot of these people are just, they're just people doing a job. People just trying to make it out of their struggle typically. So, I try to leverage what I've accomplished and do that in a way that hopefully humanizes me as a human and a person more than an athlete, because when you're an athlete, it kind of dehumanizes you. Not kind of, it definitely dehumanizes you. But a lot of athletes don't talk about some of their struggles and things. So, but yeah, we out of here.